So we're back. Got another part. So I've been asked a number of times. I've been asked, okay, so then how do you become blended then? Like, how do you do it? Like, okay, we know our placement, but how do you implement knowing your placement? And so what God showed me, told y'all, I've been on this journey. God has been very helpful in this journey. But what he began to show me was that you have to establish boundaries. You have to have boundaries. Boundaries are in place to protect. Boundaries are in place to bring order. Boundaries are in place to set a standard. So they're here to protect, they're here to bring order, and they're here to set a standard, right? And so with that, I'm like, okay, guys, so then what that mean? Like, as somebody, as I said before, somebody that is just willing to just do out of the kindness of my heart, I said, well, Lord, show me where I did not set order, show me where I did not protect, and show me where I did not set the standard the right way. And he began to show me. And so, as he showed me those things, he said, all right, I need you to do 3 things, 3-step process. Let me help y'all. This is what he said about boundaries here. He said, well, understand this, daughter. He said, even I have boundaries. Even God got boundaries, y'all. God has an order to things. He is not a God of confusion. Anything that is not him, we know when it's not him. God is very clear about his expectations, his standard. Okay? And when he sent Jesus was essentially the living example of a boundary. Okay? He was essentially a living example of a boundary. You go back to the story, think about Adam and Eve, and how even when he gave them the command, he wanted them to rule down here. He gave them that. He established the boundary. He set some order. He set some protection, some limits, and he set the expectation and the standard. And so he essentially established the boundary. He said, all right, I'm operating up here in the realm of the spirit, and I want y'all to occupy down here on earth. And because of that, he has given us the authority to speak things that are not as though that they were. He has given us the authority to speak life or death, and our words have to be honored because the universe is designed to respond to what we say. And so these are all examples of how God has boundaries, right? And he from the beginning was showing us boundaries. You can eat of every fruit here, or you can eat of every tree, but you can't have the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Boundaries. Okay. And so with that, with all those examples that he showed me that I just shared with you all, he said, all right, I got a 3-step process. The 3-step process is this: establish boundaries, implement boundaries, and then enforce boundaries. You establish them, you create them, you see where you are, you take an assessment, an internal assessment, because boundaries have to start within. Boundaries have to start within. You teach people how to treat you. Boundaries have to start within, okay? Once you start within, then God will begin to show and reveal where else these boundaries needs to be established, okay? So you establish them. You figure out what's wrong. You figure out what's going wrong. You figure out how you need to grow. You figure that out. It's an internal work, okay? Once you establish them, then you have to implement them. So after you establish and you figure out what's right, what's wrong, you figure out, okay, well, what do I need to do to fix it? All right, this is what I need to do. And then you implement that boundary, okay? Once you implement that boundary, that's basically you putting it in place. That's you taking the steps needed to say, I'm not going to accept this from anybody anymore. I'm not going to go the extra mile in this way anymore. If it's not received, or if there's not reciprocity, I'm not going to do this. Or different things like that, whether it's in your relationships, whether it's within your blended, family, whatever the case may be. And then once you implement them, you then need to enforce them. By enforcing, that means you hold people accountable to the standard that you just set. You got to hold people accountable to that because, again, you teach people how to treat you. right? And so the Lord gave me those three things, and I'm sharing those three things because the truth of the matter, when you're mending and when you're blending, when you're in that process to becoming what your family needs and what that child needs, as as the addition, as you're becoming that for that child, you're actually becoming that for yourself. I'm a witness. I'm becoming it for myself. I'm seeing myself in a way that I've never seen myself before because I'm submitted and I've surrendered to this process of becoming whole and healed. And so establish those three things, okay? And it's going to change your life. Promise you. Boundaries, boundaries, boundaries. Learn them early because I did not. Learn from me. I was doing everything. Even my mom had to say, yo, you doing a lot now. And this is the thing that happens is when you, the problem that happens when you overexert yourself, thinking you have to overcompensate because you don't know your place. When you do that, you then create an unsafe space that when you finally realize you don't actually have to do any of the stuff that you've been doing, you then get yourself hurt. That's one first things for boundary to protect. You end up getting yourself hurt because you overcompensating unnecessarily. And then once you do that, then people have this subconscious expectation that you're just supposed to do. And the moment that you do not, they're offended. But if you know your place in the beginning and you begin to put these things that I'm telling you guys, if you begin to put them in place and begin to just meditate on them and study the word for yourself so that you can see for yourself and take a look inside of you to see where you are in your mended and blended process. Once you do these things, I'm telling y'all, you will begin to see a turnaround within you first, and then you'll begin to see the fruit of your labor firsthand.